Clive, Clive, you were with Ron again last night. Show, Clive. It's my son. Clive,
Oh
Clive.
shit! I think I've watched the wrong films. Are we doing a couple of Timothy Carey films again?
Yes, we are. Hello and welcome to Ffilm Craic, the show where myself, Nicolas O'Shenanigans, and himself,
Clive, Davis. Sorry, I was conscious because never know what happens in the world. We're aware that what we're recording today is being stockpiled slightly, so won't be released quite yet
for a while.
So I just wanted to say in advance, just in case we talk about anyone who dies in the interim and we have horrible things to say about them, sorry about that. Rest in peace. There we go. I think that covers it. That's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got that. Caveat, asterisk out of the way there. So yes, this is the show where we talk about films that have fallen through the cracks, films that are not easily findable or available. And so both of the films I've chosen for us to watch this time are Mexican productions, neither of which is available on DVD with English subtitles. So the versions we watched are fan subtitled, both from the same person, a person called Spinal, who uploads stuff over at Cinemageddon, and has uploaded an enormous, like a terrifyingly amazing amount of stuff.
I hope you're on them, Nick.
Mostly Spanish language stuff, obviously, and these were just two plucked from any number I could have taken, and I think we'll probably come back to suppose. So thank you hugely to Spinal for taking the time to do this work, and really all the fan subbers in the world, because we're richer for having you guys out there.
Yeah, and, doing it for nothing other than the shits and giggles and shout outs on YouTube videos that no one watches. So
exactly.
We salute you.
Thank you.
So there you go. Perfect example. If Spinal dies in the next 2-3 months, rest in peace. Thank you for all your hard work.
Please don't. But
thank you for your service. And Nick, get on those.
Oh yeah. As I said, not to worry. My ratio over there is still very, very good. So I was looking at a bunch of the things that Spinal had subtitled, and two things just kind of jumped out right away. One was, in fact, the first one we're going to talk about, which is El Charro de las Caballeras, or the Rider of the Skulls, or Skull Rider, however you want to translate it into English. 1965, directed by Alfredo Salazar.
Skull Rider was that Nicolas Cage film, I believe.
Well, I couldn't help but that was in my mind as I was watching this.
Such a shame that's not a better film, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a perfect combination of elements, and it's just not great. So this is actually apparently, according to Spinal, the most snatched torrent on Cinemageddon.
Is that right?
Rider of the Skulls, yes. And if you go through it, even just the comments, it's got like 28, 29 pages of comments basically saying like this, why have I never heard of this underneath it. So because that's actually, he put it up quite a long time ago. Like it looks like about a decade ago, but he's still putting stuff up as we speak. But this was one of an older upload.
Actually have hang on. Speak amongst yourselves for a few seconds.
Yes, sure. Okay. I'm not sure where my co-host is going. Oh, he's left me for Ron again. That's what's going on. I turn my back for a second, and he's out like a shot. He's off. He's playing with Ron or one of his other friends. Darren. It could be Robin. There's a never-ending source.
Don't touch me there.
People.
Nick. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Incorrigible. Yes. There is a because I can't imagine it's in many English language reference books, but Rider of the Skulls does actually have a review in this book.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
The Essential Monster Movie Guide by Stephen Jones.
Okay.
which is
Well, Stephen knows his stuff, and I'm guessing is a habitué of Cinemageddon, I would imagine.
When did this book come out? I think book is quite well. Yeah, there's a lot of quite obscure stuff because it has the specific focus of monster movies. The Essential Monster Movie Guide from 1999, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Wow. So it's funny. I think you can find this on YouTube, but I don't think the version on YouTube has subtitles. At least the one that I saw up there didn't.
Yeah, I would say if anyone's not plugged into the correct resources as well, I would venture you could probably go ahead and watch this without subtitles and pretty much understand what's going on, more or less.
Yes. So yeah, because what we've learned is the life of a Mexican farmer is beset with all kinds of dangers that you might not have expected. I mean, we might have expected, the threat of sunstroke or, just backbreaking labor and so on. But yeah, a farmer dies at the beginning of each of the segments that make up our movie. And I think it's probably worth getting out of the way with this has to have been something else. Like it has to have been a failed set of episodes of a TV series because I can't find anything about this unless there's something in the book about how this came to be.
No.
But it sure feels like 3 separate episodes of a serial or a TV series.
It does.
That somebody.
On the other hand, it could just be incredibly episodic as well. Like, I wouldn't be that surprised if someone just said, "Nah, it's a film we made in 3 segments." But yes, because it's very neatly, like the time of each thing is calculated to, right. So,
and then one of our cast members disappears and is replaced by a sort of a lookalike, but with a different name at the end of second 1, and they even reference like, "Oh, where's? Oh yeah, we sent he's off at school. We have a different kid this time." Which is very bizarre.
It's interesting as well that I mean, if it would have become a series beyond this 3 episodes, it's kind of like Kolchak out west or something, isn't it?
Yes.
South of the border, Kolchak, Monster of the Week, and is enjoyable in a similar way, I think.
Yes.
Kolchak, I'm a big fan of Kolchak, but the TV series, when you actually do get around to watching it, it's always apparent that in reality, it's never quite as great as you remember it being.
Yes.
But you have a lot of goodwill towards it, mainly because of Darren McGavin, really. But so it's a bit proto-Kolchak-y, isn't it?
Yes, but it's got. So I think maybe because it has this. I mean, I guess, well, very quickly, the premise is, right, there is this guy, the writer of the Skulls, who wears a big sombrero, a black kind of face mask.
Black sombrero. Black
sombrero, all black, with 3 skulls emblazoned on his kind of, his shirt, which may be to represent the 3 skulls of the bandits who murdered his family. And then he's a bit of a Batman Mexican cowboy, right? He has sworn vengeance.
Batman in the second.
yes, he's not a big fan of Batman, but yes, he has sworn vengeance upon all wrongdoers and travels around Mexico.
And apparently he's played by Dagberto Rodriguez, but you wouldn't know that because weirdly he exposes his face to what turned out to be his 2 sidekicks for the rest of this at the end of the first episode.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure why he does that.
Nope.
And he never does it again.
No.
And I'm wondering how often is it Dagberto Rodriguez
I wonder that too.
His double is the wrestler Fernando Oces, right? Who is it you will have seen in a whole bunch of Santo films and stuff. Like whenever there was, he actually wrote a few as well, but yeah, whenever there was like, the main villain had like a cluster of like wrestler zombies or something who have a punch out with El Santo, guaranteed Fernando Oces is one of the right? But I think he's often playing the role, right? Especially when then
I really felt, because you can almost see the body shape slightly shifts to a more kind of like that wrestling physique.
Maybe Dagberto Rodriguez only turned up for that one shoot. But
that's where he shows the face, possibly. Yeah. But I think, and the suit itself gets cooler looking in the 2nd and 3rd episode. Like it's almost like the first was like the pilot for the show, and then they did some tinkering, retooling. Like, okay, that kid's not as we did a different kid. We'll keep Drunky McCoward as the other side. He's fine.
Cleophas, yes. As played by Pascal Garcia Pena. Yeah,
yes. Broadly played
quite
by.
Annoying.
Yes.
And also, why would you want this man? Like, I understand, like in the old westerns, you have like Fuzzy St. John or something, like that kind of old cool. Gosh darn it! But at the end of the day, at least they stick by you.
Yes.
This guy is just
he's out like a bolt.
Yeah. Why have you chosen this man as your sidekick of all the people you could have chosen?
Yeah. So basically, I think for me, there's several different boxes it ticks right away, and that's probably why I have such goodwill towards it. I was a huge fan of the Zorro TV series as a kid, like the black and white. I don't know whether they were actually what they were. If they were serials that were being shown, or if they were a TV series. But
I don't think I've ever seen those.
Okay. So yeah, so obviously there's the Zorro, the masked Mexican hero. There's also there's almost something misfitsy looking about his costume as well. Like because he's the Glenn Danzig version.
Well,
of
according
Zorro.
to the IMDb, the Misfits did actually see this film when they were younger. And I don't know. I'm guessing did it get the US release, or where are Misfits from? Did they grow up in like?
No, they're like New Jersey or something like that, aren't they? Now I was thinking but it would make sense if they were in California to have maybe
New
seen
Mexico or something like that. Or,
yeah,
I thought they might have crossed the border and seen it on a. But as far as I know, it never played. But it might have done. I mean, it's quite possible it might have played.
Well, I mean, in the final segment, I think in my notes I just mentioned, I said that like the Crimson Ghosts basically seem to show up, right? The Misfits logo, the three skull-faced buddies of our last, which is probably my favorite section, is the last.
Yeah, the last one is the more interesting one.
What the hell?
Yeah.
But so yeah, it's got that. It's got the wrestling stuff. So it's got that's going on. It's got this horror stuff, this spaghetti western. It's such a generic hodgepodge of stuff.
Yeah. Shot in Sonora as well, apparently.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed it's a bit less deserty looking, and a bit more like there's few more trees and stuff going on than in some of the
what
places.
would you call it? Would you call this the plains, maybe?
Yes.
Right.
Maybe, yeah.
So as we said, it's Monster of the Week, right? So every week. So the first
episode,
yes, is it's a werewolf.
A farmer is immediately murdered because every episode begins with a farmer out haplessly wandering around, and in this case gets mauled by a werewolf.
In the second one, apparently the vampire's first victim is the director as well, Alfredo Salazar, who we should mention, a writer-director who wrote a shitload of those wrestling and monster movies, but this was the first one he directed. He directed about 11 films, I think, and wrote a hell of a lot more. But this is the first one as director. Yeah, so it's a werewolf. It's a very. I mean, I don't know if I'm not sure if they even tried to make it difficult to guess the identity of the werewolf.
Nope, not at all.
It's pretty easy. I mean, just look for the man in that plaid shirt.
Yeah. The one looks like he's a werewolf. The werewolf from Seattle is the guy you're looking for. Grunge Wolf.
What's interesting as well, what I thought was, because the thing with this kind of thing, like you said, is generic to a certain extent. So the joy is looking for what's unique to it or what's different.
Yeah.
I did quite like the fact that the time-lapse transformation scenes.
Yeah.
Man to skeleton. Werewolf. And back again.
Yes.
I hadn't seen that before, I don't think.
No, I agree. And I definitely took note of that. That was a cool and weird. It was like all of his flesh melts off his body and then it reforms as a werewolf. And then
it was quite interesting. Because the thing is, obviously, because he's wearing his plaid shirt and jeans, they didn't have to spring for a full. So it's a mask and some gloves. But to be fair, it's a pretty good werewolf mask.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
All the monster stuff is kind of, even when it's looking a bit threadbare, it's at least weird looking.
It's weird. Yeah. Like all the designs are weird. Like the vampires are weird. It's much more bat-like.
That's a strange vampire.
than you would expect, you know.
We should have mentioned about this is we've got to mention this is all in black and white.
Yes, yeah, which adds to it, I think, charms rather than takes away. I'd almost not want to see it in color.
Well, the interesting thing they can do with it as well, because the other thing that struck me as I wrote this down as well because I realized again because of the goodwill and stuff, this film was getting away with some things which it shouldn't. So, while I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, this is a really interesting choice. That apart from the beginning, almost all the monster stuff is happening in broad daylight, not at night. I thought that's a really interesting choice. But then the vampire episode, the vampires are going, "Oh, I must flee back before the sun comes out," and I'm thinking, the sun is out. So
yes,
a lot of
the most egregious day for night I've ever seen.
Yeah.
There's no filter used or anything.
It had an interesting effect because I was never quite sure, is this night or day? Like,
yeah. I think it plays with your head in some strange way.
But again, I'm not crediting that to the filmmakers necessarily. The other really interesting one about the werewolf story as well is the witch character, right? And at some point when
oh yeah,
El Charro is too stupid to figure out it's the man in the plaid shirt.
She takes him to the graveyard.
Yes, a cemetery, and a victim of the werewolf opens up his coffin, comes out, and not very erudite as well, right? Starts giving the backstory. Well, you see, the werewolf was, and you're thinking, wow, I've never seen that before either.
No, and actually, his mask was surprisingly decent. Again, like it was almost like a Giannetti de Rossi, whatever his name was, like a Fulci looking thing. I was like, whoa, that's a decent looking zombie.
The maggots coming out of the eyes, right? Yeah. But the fact that he was like, I almost expected him to take out a pipe and light it. Well, let me tell you about the werewolf that killed me. And I was wondering, how do you have this information? Like, you were just killed by a werewolf, dude. When you pass over, I suppose, are you given all the information? Like St. Peter. Yeah, I suppose it's like, this is your life, right?
Yes, so, yeah.
You were killed by a werewolf, and then you get all the backstory about all the other people.
Yeah. You're given access to the expositionary files.
But that was cool. That was cool.
That was great.
Different.
And so ultimately he obviously he defeats the werewolf. Not before the werewolf kills his wife, right?
Yes. David,
like not our hero's wife, but the werewolf has a wife and a child.
Yeah. David Silva, I looked him up. I wasn't familiar with him. The guy who Plaid Wolf. Don Luis. His last film was that film Alucarda.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's okay.
It's interesting. We'll talk about this a bit more when we talk about our second film as well. But Mexican cinema is so vast, and I've seen so little of it. I have to admit, just watching Mexican films and then researching them and looking the cast list, I don't do it with necessarily films from but when I actually always take a brief look through every actor's filmographies because things always jump out. What's that? Like some Mexican film that I've never ever heard of in my life, I've made quite a list of titles now of just really peculiar sounding, interesting things. Which is why I happened to look him up and noticed he was in Alucarda. But
wow, okay,
it's definitely an area of cinema I need to. I would love to. If you were to have more lifetimes, I'd learn Spanish and actually go to Mexico, and travel around and find people with old VHS collections and things. And I mean, there's treasures out there, I think, which certainly haven't been documented in English necessarily. Maybe in Spanish, but maybe not even in Spanish. Maybe.
I'm sure. But thanks, as I said, if I go back, I'll continue to just explore what Spinal has put up. Because if these two are anything to judge by, I suspect there's lots more there.
If you're still alive when the time this comes
out. And so I was just saying, the other thing I think about Mexican cinema, and maybe this is a too broad a generalization, but like it seems quite egalitarian. Like you'll see that people, actors or directors, or will have worked with, like Buñuel and then also over here doing like
right,
fairly awesome trash, and it just seems like there's a bit more room to move around and to try different things. Maybe.
Well, we'll get to that with our guest star in the second film, right? But yeah, so back to El Charro. So yeah, second one, like we said, is a vampire story with a. Did he have his coffin in like? It looked like he had his coffin like under a ranch house or something. Or...
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Not too much to say.
At the hacienda.
Yeah, the same thing again, except yeah, he does. He's a very, very bat-like vampire.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the big ears and like
pushed up nose. And,
yeah. And then yeah, but the third one, the most interesting, I think, of the bunch. Yes. Is a headless horseman story. A sword-wielding headless horseman.
Yes.
Quite a good effect, even though it's clearly a man with a cape up to his head and a stump.
And yet
still works.
It totally works. And because it's often shot from like a distance, or there's things kind of between you and it when he's walking around in the distance, and it's
when he has a close-up,
weird.
When it's a close-up, it's a bit more, oh, that's a man balancing something on his head. Like, he's very tall.
But wisely kind of a lot of the time keeps you away from him.
Right.
And then much more creepily. Oh, the other thing so the first two segments of this movie, you might think that they're set in the 1890s, right? And then in the last segment, suddenly we're like, oh, wait a second. There's cars and like totally modern houses in this chunk. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, is this set in the 60s, like when it was made?
Yeah, you get some of that stuff in the Santo films as well sometimes when you're not quite. But I'm guessing maybe I'd love to, you have, but I'm wondering if some parts of rural Mexico.
Oh yeah, absolutely look unchanged for 500 years.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess it is supposed to be contemporary, but because of the horseback riding and the rest of it, you kind of, and the kind of frontier look of it, you think you're back in cowboy times.
I think as well, not speaking Spanish, but just having a bit of a like, and again, this might be a stereotype, but I suspect it might be one of those stereotypes that might be true as well. I have a feeling that especially in the rural parts of Mexico, people seem to speak a very polite, honorific form of Spanish, which again kind of harks back to an older time a little bit. Like, people do they speak very respectfully, and the few I've met a few Mexican people here in Japan as well, and when they were speaking with each other, I noticed it was very much in the same way as Japanese. They use a lot of like honorifics, or they don't forget to your obrigadas, de nadas, and like it's very formalized in that way. So I suppose that feels slightly archaic in some parts of the world as well. That people are actually nice and polite to each other.
Although there is a great part where he points, like in the second segment, in the vampire segment, he points to their like drunky frightened guy, and then
Cleophas.
tells the little guy, Cleophas, he's like, kick him to death. He says.
Don't blame him.
Anyway, so
not enough of him by then. He's like, for fuck's sake, why didn't I choose that cool dude as my sidekick? Like, why Cleophas? Why
did I choose the Gabby Hayes
exactly.
But then the best part really though is the girl or the lady in that last segment who has the head in the wooden box. That stuff is just like, the head looks terrible and yet is really creepy for that reason.
It talks as well for a start.
Yes.
I said, please reunite me with my body, right? and actually, unfortunately, this is someone who is dead. Shout out to the late Todd Statman, who wrote the fantastic funky Bollywood book, and whose stuff you can still read over at the Die Danger Kill blog. He wrote a review of this film, and he did point out, and after he said it, I couldn't unsee it, that the head in a box does look a hell of a lot like a later period Michael Jackson.
Oh God. Yes. So with the kind of
So,
decomposed
yes,
nose and stuff.
nice shout out there, Todd.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it is a very fun episode. This and the thing is, because the whole thing runs less than 80 minutes,
Yes.
so
Which is great.
therefore each episode is like just 25 minutes or just over. Yeah.
25,
But
yeah.
if you're not getting on with Plaid Wolf or Vampire, whatever, something else is
Yeah.
coming along in a little while.
Mhm.
And he has a sword fight with the Headless Horseman as well as a bit
Yep.
sparkling.
Yep. And then he's got those three kind of Knights Templar from a Blind Dead film sidekicks as well. If it's not enough that there's a Headless Horseman who has a rapier to fight with, yeah, he's got three skull-faced.
I wasn't quite sure. It's weird when they turned up. I was wondering for a minute, is this going to get a bit Scooby-Doo? And they're actually, like Nazis or something.
Right.
But no,
No.
he's just
No.
got an skull-faced assistants, because they seem a little, because the Headless Horseman, as threadbare as it looks a little bit, but that properly looks like, oh, that's a Headless Horseman and there's a head. But his sidekicks just look like some people in masks, right? So
Yes.
it's a weird kind
But
of.
I do think they were supposed to be. They're all of them are kind of dead, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I would say, for me at least, this one is I had a lot of goodwill to this. Goodwill towards this. So even though it's not great and it is slightly repetitive, I did have fun with it. I certainly enjoyed watching it. And
Yeah.
you can't go wrong with under 80 minutes and three
No.
monsters.
No.
And like you said, I'm slightly weak for some of the elements anyway, right? So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was a pushover for this. It takes so many boxes. I can't imagine myself going back to watch it very soon. But I probably, within the next few years, I probably will find myself hankering for a little bit of
later
a bit of Skull Rider.
In your cups, I fancy a bit of El Charo.
Yeah.
As Calaveras. It would be great as well. I mean, I doubt it's going to happen at this point, but if it was ever discovered that another 3 episodes were turned into,
I know,
El Charo 2 Charo Harder, that would be.
I wish. I would love. I would happily watch this.
Creature from the Black Lagoon lookalike, Frankenstein's monster, and the Mummy or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, more El Charo adventures. Someone reboot it. Do a Jack Monster of the Week. I would definitely watch that. You've got one customer or 2 customers at least.
Yeah. And I think there was one moment where really I just like it's in that last episode, and it's Skull Rider kind of walking down the street, and there's like an ominous bell clanging, and he's in his full getup with the mask totally covering his face, and it was so like gothic spaghetti western mashed up with, as I said, all these things that just tickle my joy place.
Yeah.
let's move on.
Yes, before you make any other horrible confessions about any of your other joy places.
So I should say there's a great bit at the very, very end where the Headless Horseman basically shouts at God, and he's like, and kind of condemns God, and he's like, I don't want to go to heaven, or I don't want to move on. I want to continue to be a piece of shit.
That's
I was a bad person.
As well.
Yeah.
That it suddenly got into those areas.
Yeah. As I said,
something, I don't know, but
something for everybody, I think. For somebody, and maybe somebody for everybody like us who likes all kinds of stupid shit.
Right. So.
All right. So.
Now, if that was a little bit too light-hearted and fun for you,
oh yes,
don't worry. Don't you worry your pretty little head. Because what we got coming up next here, then, Nick?
Yeah. So what we've got is Enemy Blood, La Sangre Enemiga, based on a novel by, I think it's Luis Bota, maybe.
Yes. Well, I'm gonna La Sangre Enemiga. As far as I can tell, I don't think it's been properly released anywhere in English, but apparently I found an image search for like maybe the Mexican DVD, and the English title on the box is The Blood Enemy.
Yes, right.
However, I found out that the Louis Botta novel that he also wrote the screenplay
has been
actually
translated in English.
yes, as
Yes, I was
The Enemy
interested.
Blood. Unfortunately, quite expensive old
Yeah,
paperback,
because it's out of print. Yeah.
but that annoyingly not too expensive that I might click that button if I've had a few too many drinks, because I would be curious to read. And no other, I mean, apparently a few of his books have been translated into English, but pretty much all out of print, right? Another film based on one of his novels was the great Mexican director Arturo Ripstein made a film called Life Sentence in 1979,
Okay.
which I think is like a crime film. That's also based on a Louis Botta. So keep an eye out for that, actually, Nick. Life
Okay, yeah.
because I would like to see more Arturo Ripstein movies in general, actually.
And our director for this is what
Rogelio A.
Rogelio
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. Yeah. Who I didn't actually look up. Did you see if he'd done anything else of note?
I mean, nothing jumped. I mean, he does have other work, but yeah, no, there were some other things on there that looked tantalizing. Let's put it that way. But it was all vaguely unfamiliar, so nothing that jumped out. But certainly on the basis of this, I'd be kind of interested. If I saw another Roger A. Gonzalez film pop up, I'd be ready to take a punt on it.
I think what fascinates me is that Luis Spota apparently is a quite a highly considered novelist and a serious novelist. But this thing is fucking crazy. This thing is like, what is this? This is so trashy in so many different ways, and yet these moments of like high art aspirations as well. It's that thing that walks that road of just like
interesting,
just batshit
camera work and framing and point of views, and
strange yet subjective moments of like inside people's heads and
should also mention that we are watching a fairly poor quality version. Like it would be nice to see this cleaned up.
Right. Although it did add to the grubbiness, which is really, you kind of feel like you need a scalding shower by the time this thing is
kind of like
through.
Weird mix of like Andy Milligan doing a Jodorowsky film or something.
Yes, exactly. And this is the kind of, I mean, another thing that kind of came to mind actually was Poor White Trash 2. Right?
Yes,
it has the same grit and like just the bleached out looking wooden shanty shacks that the kind of whole thing seemed to be filmed in and around, and patches of waste ground in this town somewhere. It was just...
Didn't Joe Dante famously, when he was a critic, once refer to a film, I can't remember which one, as looking like it had been processed in a bathtub of piss?
Yes,
got that kind of look to it.
It kind of has that vibe, yeah.
This is from 1951.
Even whatever it was, the Urania film logo that came up at the beginning was like a whoa. That's like the weird noise and a slightly disconcerting logo. It's like I was like, oh fuck, what have I gotten into here?
Yeah, and I noticed as well then the running time. This thing's 2 hours.
Yes,
which is it
was long.
Probably shouldn't be 2 hours, but
I agree.
Just
about doesn't. It does overstay its welcome, maybe, but it almost does.
Gets a bit repetitive.
Yeah. The 18th time.
What is this cheerful, family-friendly film about? I almost called you Ron there, Nick.
So. Oh, and we should also mention that El Indio is in this. Who?
Yes, Emilio Hernandez.
When am I not happy to see El Indio? Oh, he's not in it much. He's kind of a special effect almost. But he is in it.
Doing something very sleazy as well. So
yes,
he's actually he's another one of those guys. Like obviously, I like most gringos, I know him from Wild Bunch and stuff like that. But of course, he has a long career and director, right? And he I think the one we might maybe want to do on here is didn't he direct a version of Steinbeck's The Pearl, which is considered like one of the classics of the golden age of Mexican cinema, right?
But he himself is also was a maniac.
Yes.
Right. Like,
he's in El Indio, right? he's
Yeah,
Mr. Macho, right? He's
if there isn't a book about him, there should be. And we should look into whether or not anybody's done a biography of him.
There must be one in Spanish at least, I would have thought. But
yeah.
No, I agree with you. He's always been on my radar. I really need to find out a bit more about this guy, right? Because he seems like a proper force of nature.
Yeah, he looks like a guy who you would have seen photographed right next to Zapata, the guy who just looks even slightly scarier.
Well, I think he might.
I think he actually was involved in the
when he
revolution.
Was really young, right?
Yeah,
I think he did. Yeah, run off and join Zapata or something along those lines.
Yeah.
For sure.
So basically, in a nutshell, what we've got is a little crew of itinerant clown/entertainers who live in a shanty.
Crap circus, basically.
They're a really.
They have a one little bear, a few dogs.
We don't really do actual tricks that I can see. They just get lifted up by the girls.
About, pervy alky drummer.
Yeah,
and a couple of hot.
He's also blind.
Yeah.
And then
no one gives them any money. Like one of the first scenes is them, putting on a show, and then everyone just walking off and not giving.
Totally disinterested. Yeah, kids are just like.
He says, yeah.
And then our the leader of this kind of little troupe is this hunchbacked is Esteban, right? And his clown makeup is really disturbing because it's kind of like he just looks like a stroke victim or something. Like he's painted his mouth. It's like, oh man.
David Reynoso.
Yes, yeah. It's a hell's a poppin' performance from him. He's given it his all the time.
Man. If you're not fond of lots of close-ups of David Reynoso sweating,
freaking out,
might not be the film. It might trigger you. This
film. Yeah. There's probably several ways in which this film could potentially trigger an audience if they're not ready for it. In fact, I would say approach with caution, maybe.
Yeah, so in his little troupe, he's got this blind played by Carlos Ansira, and his wife played by Magda Guzman, and her daughter, Ticia Robles, who the blind alky drummer tries to get his mitts on.
Yep,
a few times there.
Yes.
David Reynoso also has, I suppose, what we used to call an imbecile for a son.
Yes, who's also strong. He's the strong man of the circus.
Yes, he's Juan Miranda.
Yeah,
and he's funny when we get to what happens. He's hilarious when he keeps bringing up the thing that happened.
Yes, at the beginning. Yes.
He's the most likable character, I think.
Oh yeah, by far.
But most problematic is David Reynoso has a very hot, no other way of going, a cock tease of a wife, basically, as played by Mercedes Carreño.
Yes, who I think was 24 at the time, but looks even younger, and runs around basically pantyless in like a tiny sack skirt, or like dress, basically, or some variation of that stuff. All reminded me a lot.
Mercedes. Thanks, Spinal.
That stuff all really just reminded me of those like Swamp Shack Girl kind of 50s dime store novels. Like that was just like, wow, that's exactly what you imagine.
Plays like Ori hit novel or something like that, right? Like
or like
as soon as she comes into a new town, wiggling her belly covered ass in a little dress. Everyone. You know why everyone's come out to watch their shit act, and it's not the dogs, right? It's
Yes.
And of course she plays it up, but it's quite interesting as well, though, because she does have, as the further we get into the story, she does have this quite interesting monologue about basically being a masochist, right? She has this whole thing about how she actually doesn't get any pleasure at all from sex.
From the sex act, no.
However, she's also afraid of having pleasure.
Yeah.
Because if it's anything like the pain, so at least I know what the pain is. So it's like you said, in this extremely sleazy film, and so it's also got this kind of this quite insightful little nuggets, right? Which I suppose is the benefit of, you can complain about people slumming it or whatever, but but sometimes you have to go to the gutter to get the gutter facts, right? So
Yes, yeah,
so it's kind of, I don't know, kind of, I feel like marinating yourself in it is that's the only way that you, that's my excuse anyway, that I've always used. And
Um,
and this
uh-huh.
is a good example of that, right? When it does
Oh
work,
yes,
you know, you can't, I don't think you can get to the stuff that works in this film in a polite way. Do you know what I mean?
no,
This
no,
is the
no,
only
for
route.
sure. Um, yes, yeah. So I mean, that whole opening segment is really effective because it does it's great because it does this thing with your identification that then the rest of the film kind of like undoes, right? Because at the beginning, basically, this good-looking, Lothario guy appears to show up and he's calling to this hunchback, kind of clowns. Well, we know they're together. They're not actually
Yeah.
husband and wife, though, right?
No, kind of common
No.
law wife, I guess, which it would be a perfect title
Yeah,
for a novel of this sort, right?
exactly.
Common law cabin or something like that.
Yes, common law clown cabin.
Brilliant.
So yeah, he shows up and he's like, yeah, I'm here basically to take your girl, like, and
because you're
the
a
guy's like,
old cripple, basically.
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And then so you're like, wow, what a piece of shit. Like, what an asshole to show up and say this to this guy who's obviously troubled, And so when he kind of kills him with the razor blade, you're partly sympathetic until, it gets a bit darker when he's like, hey,
imbecile son.
Imbecile son, can you stuff him down the jacks? Like
that was So basically, this is the pit underneath the outhouse that you dig.
Outhouse, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and the thing is, it doesn't even show anything. It doesn't show him like in a
no,
turd, but it's oh no, that doesn't look.
And the fact that his body doesn't quite go down, they have to kind of fold him to get it in there. Everything
and the
about
fact
it
that the
awkward.
son's enjoying himself. Ah, papa, papa, he don't do it.
Yeah,
there's a scene later on where he's just randomly digging a hole, and obviously David Reynold's character is having problems, and he's haunted by flashbacks of killing this man or whatever. And he looks over, and his son is just sat in this hole and go, "Hey, Papa, remind you of anything?" So funny. He does that a few times. Like,
yep.
He's so indiscreet, and David Reynold's character is like, shut up.
But I think what's effective is then, obviously that moment as the movie plays out, we see it again later on, almost that exchange in a way with more information about who they both are. And we're like, yeah, I was identifying with the wrong person.
It's common law clown cabin Rashomon.
Exactly. Yeah, so pretty much, yeah, he murders this guy, they kind of move on, and really the rest of the movie is just him in various stages of mental breakdown over the fact that he's constantly afraid that, because he's impotent, right?
He's impotent, and yeah, so there's flashbacks. There's always a sign of quality. There's flashbacks inside of flashbacks.
Yes.
Including one in which a dwarf hangs herself.
Yep.
Which is quite, and not because but it's just the whole kind of the weird implication that this might have something to do with, tainting the blood of the, because that's the strong man,
the
mother, right?
Yes,
and there's a slow-mo sequence when he's throwing his mother up and down. Yeah, there's
tossing her. Yes.
Yeah, it's everything about this film is so just dripping in sleaze, and it's just
scum.
Yes. Yeah, and it just gets worse. All the characters get worse and worse, and just when you think your sympathies are with one person, that person does something else horrible, and you find more about. So yeah, like you said, David Reynold's character from the beginning is broadly sympathetic, but then when you get the backstory of how he got together with her, Mercedes Carreño, it's like,
gross. Yep. And then his desperate, pathetic kind of clinging to her. And then he becomes very abusive as the film goes on, right? He beats her quite badly. She ends up in prison hospital.
Yeah. And then Leticia Robles' character comes in at one point then, because she starts discovering boys, and that doesn't end up very well for her either.
Nope.
It's just and then it goes into even more twisted territory. Just when you think, this is kind of twisted enough, it adds another little wrinkle in the final section there, right, with his son, and
yes, yeah.
it almost went so far. I was like, are they going to do one? Are they going to like just twist it one more? Are they going to find them in a three-way with a goat or the bear or the dogs or something?
Yeah,
But they don't quite.
You never knew with
No.
this film.
No, and then
sure.
eventually after 2 hours, they're like, "All right, that's enough. Shut it down."
Yes.
And it is a little bit too long, but boy, oh boy, this is. I mean, it's not like gory, and it's not.
Nope.
Like, I mean, there's more problematic films. It's just so I can't think of another word for it. It's just sleazy and like
relentlessly sleazy.
Yeah, and everyone's horrible.
And poverty, just like it's just everything about this movie
poverty is just porn or something.
Yeah,
and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
As it almost has like it has it's bits of John Waters, it's bits of Joe Dorowski, it's bits of Andy Milligan, it's it's all that stuff.
Like I said, it's that kind of. It seems a genuine article in a way. So some people would take against it because of the fact that it is exploitative, right? It is definitely exploitative. It's poverty, it's deliberately going out. But like I said, I think that's the only way you can do this. You have to take the good. You can't do the polished version of it,
right?
In a way, because it's inauthentic, doesn't it? To tidy it, to make it polite.
That strangely jumped to my mind was we talked about the two films by him before, and I don't know why his name is not coming to me right now, but Django Kill and
Julia Questi.
Yeah, Julia Questi, and particularly Julia Questi's editor, like Franco Arcali, like some of the editing in this, some of the weird, like the choppiness of like the flashback to the murder, like the way it was kind of all hacked up, and then their ability to use sleaziness and scumminess, but also in this kind of weird arty way.
A great bit of editing. There's a great bit of editing where Mercedes Carreño's character is remembering her mother with a succession of men, and they've ended in like 2 or 3 different men. Like it's that kind of rapid fire Russ Meyer type editing. That was really well done, I thought.
And remember the whole scene where she's, she gets pregnant by another scummy guy that she's kind of taken up with, who's a real piece of work, who runs the local store.
This is Eric del Castillo, who I think, if we knew our stuff, might also be a very famous, maybe not El Miguel Fernandez famous, but I think he's probably again a surprisingly big name actor to be in something like this,
Right. So yeah, he what? Oh yeah, so there's this weird one where she's shot in this kind of weird black void, imagining the child that she doesn't end up having, who's kind of running around naked butted. And it's just bizarre.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird very good like dream sequences.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, be warned. This film is not a feel-good movie. This film is sleazy as hell, but also has these weird literary aspirations because it's based on this novel by apparently I really want to see if this is a direct translation of the book and what the book is like.
Keep an eye out at your secondhand bookshops.
I will do for sure.
I would and we now have 2 new members to the Mercedes Carreño fan club as well.
Yes. I think,
get on it, Spinal.
This is the kind of thing where you that's what I say. This is the kind of thing where this is why the show exists, right? This is why we're trying to probe into some of these crevices and cracks, because you never know what you're going to find. And I wouldn't have imagined I was going to find Skull Rider and Enemy Blood.
Well, especially this one, because I think you might come across Rider of the Skulls were you to do some sort of deep cross-reference research, horror film, Western horror.
Right.
The thing with Blood Enemy is it's kind of not a specific genre. Like it's not even, you couldn't call it, like, even though it's got elements of like she freak or like a carny film, it's a little bit of a carny, but they're not even proper they don't even have a proper circus or
No,
a midway, right? It's just
no.
they don't even have a tent.
Apparently, it was considered like a prestige picture as well,
Is that
right?
right?
And yeah, and not just that, but apparently it was a massive success.
I can see
Probably
that. I can see that.
probably based on one feature, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'd have
think
gone
about
back a couple of times, I think, for that, because you
and
wouldn't have had videos in those days. So
consider it when it comes out. You know, like
71, yeah.
it's 71, and it's Mexico, which is the funny thing about Mexico is it's kind of these. There's two Mexicos in a way. Like you can still be in places in Mexico and you wouldn't be able to find a nudie mag. You know, there's there's a part of Mexico and the Mexican culture that is very conservative still,
Right,
and it
right.
is a Catholic thing.
Catholic, yeah.
And so this movie must have just been like a
Yeah, but you know, all over you can't you can't really fully enjoy your Catholicism without a bit of guilt, right? So you need
yeah.
you need your salt and pepper, right?
It'd be hard to imagine nobody left the theater feeling anything but a weird mix of very excited and very guilty.
They were crossing themselves and then hurrying home while it was all still fresh. Yeah, well, yeah. What was it? I did have one other point as well I wanted to make. Oh yeah. So even though it was a, if what you're saying is right, it was a prestige picture. It's funny though, watching it, I got the feeling that they must have been somewhat limited as well, because they have all these flashbacks, but the one story they tell about how David Yost became a cripple in a train wreck, and I was noticed,
Yes.
oh, they're not showing that. Like
No.
that seems like that might be a little bit too expensive.
Yes,
or I suppose they could have edited in footage from that. What's that film with Telly Savalas as Pancho Villa with the trains crashing into each other?
Oh yeah.
Pancho Villa.
Via Rides? Maybe?
No, not Via Rides. It's the one that was made back to back with Horror Express.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyway, but the Telly Savalas Pancho Villa movie.
Yes, of course. Who? Well, actually, I don't know which is more, him or Marlon Brando.
Brando, I don't know which is more ridiculous. Anyway,
did Pancho Villa have hair? I'm not sure.
I feel like he did.
Okay, so I'm afraid we might have to reluctantly go with Brando on that one then.
Brando here, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway, I actually quite enjoyed both of these in very different ways.
Thank you for bringing them both to my attention. Thank you, Spinal.
Thanks, Spinal. Hope you're still doing all right.
And thank you, Mercedes Carreño.
Thank you
very, very much. Yes.
All right. Shall we sign off?
I think so. Before we say anything more, we regret.
Yes, I think so.
All right. Okay, Jack. Until next time, see you in the crack again for more cracking good times.